Welcome to another Taking the Reins preview show. Goodness me, have we been waiting a long time for this meeting. It's the World Sports Betting Cape Town Met. And not only do we have fantastic horse racing on display, but this is one of the highlights of the year in terms of betting opportunities. We've got a 1 million rand pick six carryover and an estimated likely pool of 10 million for the pick six. And not only that, highlight in the betting calendar, we are bringing you this race meeting in courtesy with the Hong Kong Jockey Club as one of the World Pool Bet with the World Race meetings, and we should have fantastic pools on offer all throughout the day for our local punters to get involved with. And I've got an esteemed panel of guests with me to take you through the races. On my right, Aldo de Meyer, welcome. Thank you for taking your time out. We'll touch base on this matter before we get into this particular card, but news this week that Charles Dickens will be running in the Cape Derby at the end of the month. You've been riding him in the past couple of weeks. Take us through the aftermath after the Lormrons Kings Plate. How's the horse doing and how are you feeling going into the Derby? I know it's still a couple of weeks away, but confidence he'll get the trip?
Yeah, I've never had any reservations whether he'll go 10 furlong. I had reservations going to the Queen's Plate. I never thought he was anywhere close to his best, but obviously we took our chances, and despite him, I feel not being at his best, I still think he ran out of his skin. So I'm really satisfied that he's back to himself again now. He looks and feels like he could win it over any trip, and he's now starting to take the first couple of steps towards the Derby, and pretty confident going in that direction.
It's fantastic. We'll touch on him a little bit later as we get to the reruns of the main events. Lucinda Woodruff, we've had you on a couple of months ago, I think it was, but thank you for coming back. You're building a fantastic little string out at Milnerton, and we hope that it grows from strength to strength. How has from a trainer's perspective, just seeing the change amongst Cape Racing in this summer season, it's really built up as the meetings have gone on, and it's obviously been something that's been fantastic to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's been wonderful. Just the vibe and the hiss in the mornings has been fantastic. You feel like you're really working towards something now again. And you've got that old school racing feeling back where there's people talking on the streets, there's people talking everywhere you go, and there's just such a good spirit around Milnerton in the mornings. And when you come here with your clients, your clients are happy to come racing again. So it's great to be a young yard and building up into this new era of racing, and yeah, fantastic. I hope I can build up next year and be a little bit more competitive on these big days.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, it's good to have you back, and while we're talking about the Cape Derby, you, under no uncertain terms on our last preview show, told me to tell the public to put Rockpool as the banker, never mind the favourite at my command, and he duly arrived, but he looks like a talented son of Futura, and he'll be in a race versus potentially cousin Casey and Charles Dickens at the end of February.
Yeah, I know, Justin, I think the race was right for him. I think he got 6 kilos from At My Command, and I wasn't convinced that At My Command, being a Ferrari out of a speed National Assembly mare, would stay the trip. And a race I think it was prime for him. I don't think it was the strongest field. It's a massive step up in the Derby, and it's level weight. That makes the world of difference. So we're not sure he's up to the caliber of horses like Charles Dickens and Cousin Casey, which for me are the two horses to beat without question, especially depending on how Cousin Casey goes in the WSB Met. But it's building up to a hell of a race, and I think it's going to be a great climax to the season.
Absolutely. Well, let's get straight into the racing, and the opening event for the monster 10 million estimated pick six is going to be race 4, the Schweppes Mallorca Stakes. Now, what a way to start with this Group 1 weight for age premier event for the fillies and mares over 1,600 meters, and we see the return to the track of the champion, number 3, Captain's Ransom. And before we get to you, Jono, we're going to dive straight into the rerun here, and look, she's going for 3 in a row, Jono. I mean, what more can we say about her? She's done absolutely everything in her career absolutely perfectly, and confidence in this small field. I know she can be a little bit out of her ground at times, but with 6 runners, you've got to be very confident going into this race.
Yeah, I think, Justin, there's not much that the field can do to try and get a beat in terms of pace. If there's a slow run race, she can sprint all day. As you saw, she won the SA Filly Sprint over 6 furlongs, and in the 1800 last time out, Group 1, she was closing at the winner. Another few strides, it looks like she gets up to win. So she's a very hard horse to beat in this field. I think it's going to take a lot of bad luck in running to get her beat. And I think she has the measure of this field. And, it's the first leg of the pick six. Now, do you banker her? For me, if you don't banker her, it's a guaranteed field leg. There's not a horse you can leave out if you look past her. So my advice to the punters, if you don't banker her, go field. But it's also nice to bank in the first leg. If you do happen to go out, she doesn't win, you have the rest of the day to make up. You can play jackpots and recover. But for me, over this distance, she's going to be near impossible to beat.
Absolutely. Lucinda, this horse Shanzanet, obviously very talented runner from the Andre Null stable, hasn't quite been at her best since she's come back to the races this particular season. What do you think, if Captain's Ransom has a flat day, what do you think are the main dangers here?
Funny, Shanzanet, obviously she hasn't been at her best at all. Andre, I think, had a bit of a virus early on in the season, and his horses seem to be coming to form again now. He had that good winner on Queen's Plate Day in the Stayers race. So I hope his horses are turning. I would think she'd have to be at her absolute best, though, to beat Captain's Ransom, and I don't know if she's really had the prep during the season into this race that Andre would have wanted.
Yeah, you are absolutely spot on there, and I think last time probably also not a filly that quite sees out 1800 meters. But Aldo, if you had the pick, you're not riding in this particular race, but if you had the pick of any horse to try and beat Captain's Ransom, which one would you be looking for in this race?
She's very tricky, like Jonas says, after Captain's Ransom, you know. I was considering trying to get the weight down for Golden Hostess. I think we found a few things that makes her either really effective or really ordinary, you know, and I think if we take our chances, it's not a filly I'm going to leave out. I think a couple of swingers would perhaps be something I'd advise. I think she's at 20-1. She ran 2 lengths off Make It Snappy. So, again, while I was making my run, she was really cruising through the field quite nicely. And as soon as I exposed her to daylight, she just seemed to just plod on. And despite her plodding on, she gets beat 2 lengths in a Group 1. So it was the first time she went a mile. I think up to 1400 she really flies at them because she only really sees the line late. So I think probably going to adopt similar tactics at any price. There's a lot of horses that's got question marks, so there's no reason why you shouldn't add her at 20-1.
Absolutely. And what about this mount of Christophe Soumillon's Desert Miracle? I mean, she's a super talented filly. Also distance a bit touch and go, but she's got to have a bit of a chance if Captain's Ransom is off her game.
Nice run last time. She sprinted quite nicely. Again, I think it's a little, potentially a little susceptible over a mile, especially in Cape Town, in Captain Ransom's backyard. Tough nut to crack, but I suppose you're going to try to find some swingers here.
Cool, that's fantastic. That's the wrap-up of the Shreps Mallorca Stakes, and we are expecting Captain's Ransom to pull off a 3rd win in a row in the Premier Mile event for H48 fillies. Let's move on to the 6th race. Now, this is a very, very exciting race. The 2-year-old racing that we've seen has been very competitive, and we've seen a lot of very talented horses come out of the event so far. And the City of Cape Town Summer Juvenile Stakes for R500,000 is the 2nd leg of the Summer Juvenile Series. 1100 meters. We're going to jump straight into the rerun here. Aldo, I'll pick you up. We've got Golden Tatiana from the Glen Cotson stable, who won a very good race, and she's a chestnut filly, black colors with the pink armbands. But we got to look out there for at the back, Aldo, red sleeves, white cap and blue body of Ricky Maingard's horse Bohemian Grove. A lot of ground to make up, and really takes off at the end of the race. Only gets beat about a length or so. And we've got to expect a little bit of improvement out of this. There's been tons of betting support coming into Saturday's race. And with that little bit of extra ground, a horse like that should be able to get a length or two closer to the winner. What have you made of these 2-year-olds so far?
Yeah, listen, a couple of really impressive runners. I thought Justin's also was quite impressive when he won first time out. That was a really eye-catching run there from Mr. Maingard's as well. Definitely is going to come on from that. I think he was given every opportunity to hit the line running. Most impressive I've seen so far was this runner, the abdicator of Brett Crawford. I think Louis will canter down, and he was speaking as though the race was over, you know, and he's not someone that really boasts in a manner like that. And he thought he was just going to come here and just point it, which he duly did, and he looked like he was carrying a bit of pudding that day. So I think he might be a tough nut to crack, but also I won't overlook this horse of Mr. Mango Bohemian Grove. It was quite an eye-catching win, and eye-catching run. And if a horse runs on the way he ran there without too much pressure, I think he's going to definitely give a good account of himself again.
Lucinda, fillies always tend to do quite well in these races where they get a bit of a sex allowance, and juvenile fillies can tend to be quite forward in comparison to colts at times. And we've seen Glenn's filly here, Golden Tatiana, win. She wins with quite a bit in hand too. It's not like she's a cheap speed filly who's not got much to come. So I think she's got to be a big runner. What have you, any of these other 2-year-olds caught your eye?
Yes, this horse of Peter Muscat's that ran behind the abdicator. You know, if you're going to be going, I think this race, you can't really go field. I think you've got to put just quite a few in it. And like you said, Ricky's horse too. You've got to kind of be looking for those horses that have had their first runs in the future races that are running on impressively like that. So I've put quite a few in here. Obviously, Banker the Abdicator. he's definitely the most impressive 2-year-old I've seen this season. I think he's a half-brother to Alboran C, if I'm right.
I think the mare is, yes,
The mare is,
very
sorry,
closely
yes.
related, correct.
So, I mean, 1,000 meters, I think he's going to be a really good sprinter to come. And then, I've gone Golden Tatiana, and also Justin's horse, Golden Sickle, was also quite a good one, I thought.
Golden Sickle was very impressive as we come to you, Jono. Now, the Abdicator ran, he beat that horse Icy Blast quite well. Icy Blasts was second on debut behind your very good horse. Gimme Lightning. And the other one, Speeding Bullet, I think was third that day. So a bit of a line of form there. You got Golden Sickle. Now, she was very impressive when she won. Take us through your runners. Obviously, these 2-year-olds are very hard to gauge and they're improving at different rates. But with Richard retaining the ride on Golden Sickle, this looks like your stable elect here.
I think this race is renowned for throwing a wild card. So for the punters, from a punter's perspective, I think if you're playing a pick 6, it ain't a race I'd go short. You know, this is a race where I'd recommend going sort of 10 horses. And there's a lot of horses that have a weight advantage. The first thing you need to take note of. And I think that the form's completely unexposed. There could be some great horses lurking in this field. Run once, might be green on debut. Golden Sickle, I know Justin and Richard are pretty confident of a solid run. Bohemian Groove ran a terrific race on debut. And it is a horse that we prepared for the Ready to Run sale. Lovely horse. And we do think it'll run right into contention, and the money has poured on it. So you've got to respect that. And a horse like Noonday Gun ran a great race on debut, well weighted. And the Abdicator, fantastic debut. And even William West, and as you go further and further down the field, Golden Tatiana, I think, has got a chance. And even a horse like Streets Have No Name, hopelessly green on debut, but a very smart sort that could pop up. So for me, this is not a race you want to back the favourites. Always throws a wild card, and you probably want to look for value here and go wide in the pick 6 is my call.
I think an interesting runner, Jono, could also be number 14, First Origin from the Gavin Smith yard. Now, this race has been won by many a PE sprinter over the years, and What a Winter is not shy of throwing a quick early horse. Obviously, there was a bit of betting support. Wasn't a cheap horse, cost 400,000 national yearling sale. Betting support and arrived very well first time out. So PE horses have done well in this race and probably should go in as well. But as you say, very open. And the Abdicator seems like from the panel here, a horse that has caught the eye in the early 2-year-old racing so far. And as Lucinda touched on, a very, very good female line and one laden with speed. And it obviously doesn't hurt either to be by the sire No Nay Never, who is synonymous with throwing juvenile runners in Europe. So look out for a fantastic run there from the Abdicator, and massive betting support for a very, very good debutant in Bohemian Grove. Next race we're going to go on to is race 7, the World Sports Betting Gold Rush, over 1,600 meters now. First of its kind type of race in South Africa, being run for 7.5 million rand. This is for horses that were graduates of the former Cape Thoroughbred Sales January Book 1 sale. And I must say it has thrown a fantastic field. There's been a lot of hype and build-up going into the race for people booking slots. And before we get into the rerun here, Jonathan, we'll go with you. Take us through the last week or two with people clamoring to fill their slots with horses. It's been quite exciting.
Yeah, and you know, we had 0 tickets, so we eventually ended up with 3 horses in the race. And I think it was one of those, supply and demand scenarios where everyone was holding back, hoping for a big price on their ticket. And then they did a lot of trading in the beginning, and right at the end, there's not many horses left, and there's like 2-3 tickets that are lurking. And I think there's a lot of desperation in terms of getting rid of tickets. But the good news is that every ticket found a horse, and I think it's a fantastic initiative by the sales company, and I think it's something that we need to grow on. And to race of this sort of size, prize money is fantastic for the game, very exciting, and it's thrown a fantastic field as well.
It has, and we're going to go straight into the horse that personally I think is probably the one to beat, and that comes from your yard. That's number 8, Royal Aussie. Now, Suzette and Barcy were a group of owners that did own a slot, and luckily they didn't have too much of a decision to make with who they would run in their slot, because Royal Aussie's been a pretty standout and above average horse from day one. And we're going to go into the rerun here of the HollywoodBets Cape Guineas last time, and we will look slightly behind the action, because Royal Aussie and Dave the King, 2 horses that are running here. You can see Royal Aussie in the pink and blue move up pretty well up on the inside there, and Dave the King in the white through the middle. They renew rivalry here, and they ran 4th and 5th in this event. Obviously, Aldo comes up on the outside on the superstar Charles Dickens, who wins going away. But Jono, the prep with Royal Aussie this summer, you've been targeting this race, obviously, a 1,600 meter event. What do you make of his chances here? He's got to be the horse to beat.
Yeah, this race was always in mind, and we weren't that keen on running him in the Guineas, and it was kind of an afterthought. So his prep wasn't ideal, to be honest. And I do think he's going to come on from that run. Justin has it absolutely spot on. And, you know, from an 8-draw, Richard Fourie up, I think he's going to take a lot of beating in this field. It's not the strongest field if you're comparing to the Guineas and where he ran fourth, and the horse that in front of him, Cousin Casey, Charles Dickens. You know, if he just reproduces that run, it's all he's got to do. And Justin does feel that he's got him better than that run. So for me, he's going to take a power of beating. And it's one of those fields, once again, you know, he could be a possible bank in certain perms. If you look past him, you've got to go wide because, you know, there are a lot of horses that you can make a case for in this field. Even Justin's other 2 runners, It's Raining William and Triple Time could pop up. And there's been a lot of money for King Regent, which you've got to respect as well.
It's Raining William hasn't quite been this trip. I mean, he's stepping up quite a bit, but I mean, he's bred for the ground. He's running in Drockenstein's own slot. Striker up, big race rider, and obviously Triple Time there as well, who's been bubbling under just a few lengths off them. But It's Raining William shouldn't be any stamina doubt.
Absolutely none. If you look at his pedigree, I'm just surprised it took Justin, I think, 10 runs to get him further than 6 furlongs. So, you know, he's a horse that could very much improve over the trip. And good luck leaving Striker straight him out of anything, you know. So if he delivers in a race, he can get anything to win. So he's got the draw, and he's a horse who could throw an upset here. So, you know, I think the way to structure your pick sixes on this day, for me, there's a possible bankers on the day, and you just got to take various burns. Maybe just take 1 or 2 combinations rather than 1 pick six. It would be my advice to the punters.
Aldo, take us through the best runners here. Max Theato is running in Marsh Shirtliff's slot, which you are riding from draw 1. He looks like a horse who might be a little bit better in 4-6 months' time. This race may come a little bit soon. Is he lacking a little bit of quality at the moment for this type of field?
He's always shown a little bit of quality. I don't think he's actually set the foot wrong. I think last time you can draw a line through his run, he was moving up to go challenge the contenders up front, and then he unfortunately got popped between 2 horses. And barring that, he's always been in the mix. He's strengthened up. I think that's perhaps what you're referring to. He just hasn't rounded off his races as well as you'd like him to, but he has been carrying top weight, and he has been in the deep end a good couple of runs. But despite him having stiff tasks on his hands, he's still given quite a good showing of himself, and I'm expecting him to be in the mix. I see he's at 16-1. I have a good success rate in these sort of races, so 1 draw plum. I think they're going to go hella pace, and I'll be surprised if my horse is not in the mix. He's in a really good condition. Royal Aussie, tough nut to crack. And in saying that, if you're going to include Royal Aussie, you're going to have to include Brett's runner as well, the one Louis is riding, Seeking the One, because the 2 of them finish side by side, and there's a massive price difference. So I think you're going to have to do a bit of studying, because this race is always ran upside down, at least a race of this nature, because they normally go a heck of a pace, and horses that can sit just a fraction off it normally seems to have the best results. And Royal Oz is one of those horses who's quite versatile, and he can just dictate from where he wants to be.
Absolutely. Lucinda, we're running out of time for this segment, but number 3, King Regent. Take us, very impressive so far. Second to Without Question, who just ran second in the Politician. That must be a big runner here as well from a good draw.
Yeah, I don't know if it might be a little bit too. He's been winning really well up the straights. I know he went a bit of ground last time and he got touched off. I think we need to mention Dave the King here, because he was only, I think, half a length off Royal Aussie in the Guineas. Like they said, there's going to be a hell of a place on, and a horse like that he kind of finds at the end. I think he's going to be running on really strongly too. Obviously the draw is a bit of a worry, but if there's a pace, then that's not a problem.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great summary of the World Sports Betting Gold Rush. It's first of its kind, R7.5 million race for these 3-year-old graduates. And we are going to bring you the main action of the main events in our next segment. Don't go away. Race 8 is the Pongratz Cape Flying Championship, a 1.25 million rand event for the fastest horses in the land. It's a 1,000-meter dash. And Jump and Bowl is the name of the game here. And we're going to go straight into the rerun of what was the curtain raiser for this event on Lormrand's King's Plate Day, the Winchester Sprint Cup. And a couple of horses renewing rivalry here as they go for the Group 1. Isi Vungu number 1 with Mr. Cobbs number 2. And, of course, Aldo de Meier's ride Resonate, who is a horse who has got quite an interesting running style, seems to come from off the speed. And, Aldo, you're going to have to time your run again in this particular race on him as sharply as you can. What is his correct distance? What do you think he's most effective over?
It depends what conditions he is, how he's moving, how the track is, how firm it is. This time of the year, him being nice and sharp, I think he loves a 5. I think the harder they go, the better. If he's moving quite nicely, he's a massive runner here. He's been giving a lot of weight away for some time now, and in terms like this, I think it's a bit more in his favour. I must say that Isivungu Vungu was travelling next to me last time. He had a double or triple handful. Unfortunately, unfortunately for him, Maro's got the split before Izos did, and he had to loop the field, and he was perhaps just touched off by Mr. Cobbs, who was going quite well that day, but we were giving him quite a bit of weight. So Isivungu Vungu, I think the horse to beat. Other than that, it's pretty open.
And we'll go through this replay now when it pops up. And Mr. Cobbs, I mean, he's a horse who also on his day from that stable of Candace's, he pops up with a big run on his day, quite inconsistent. But here is the rerun. Rio Kirari, we will get to with Jono there, is also just bubbling under, a horse that probably needed that to tighten up. But there you are in the blue sleeves, blue cap just in behind, and you're looking for a gap. And I think, Aldo, I mean, we're probably going to expect a similar type of blanket finish with this race here. All these horses are quite evenly matched.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of weight turnarounds, but it is over 5 furlong, and it's pretty fast 5. So I wouldn't take too much of the weight in account too much. You know, I'm probably going to expect a similar finish, and there's been a finish like that almost every year. As I said, as you see, Usivungu Vungu just unfortunately had to loop the field, and it kind of cost him a bit of momentum. Mr. Cobbs, again, very capable in his day. I think Gareth took his chances there. I think he went for all or nothing and seemed to work out for him, and that's the most effective Mr. Cobbs is going to be. I see he's a reserve runner at this stage, so I'm not sure if he's going to get in. But another horse I have a lot of respect for is Give Me a Prince. Keegan speaks so highly of this horse, and if the 5's not too fast for him, massive runner.
Yeah, I think that has got to be the question with him, if the 5 is not going to be just a little bit too quick at this level. But he's a lightly raced horse and he's loaded with quality. Jono, we saw Rio Kirari there. He had a bit of an issue which kept him off the track for a while, and obviously he's come back a little bit heavy, and he's maybe a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of prep and condition going into this race compared to some of the others. What do you make of his chances?
Just on the contrary, I think he's actually closer to spot on. This is his 3rd run after a break. He's doing particularly well. I think the pricing in this race is wrong. I think Kimi Prince is not a 10-to-1 shot. My 2 fancies in this race are 10-to-1 and 20-to-1, which is Rio Kirari. I think he's going to bounce back. And if he comes anything too close to his best, I think you'd have no problem beating a field of this caliber. I do, like Aldo said, Kimi Prince, I think is a fantastic sprinter. I think he's arguably the best sprinter in the country in time. And for me, he's a massive runner, Kimi Prince, even despite the trip. Good horses win over any trip. And I think you've got to throw Rio Kirari in all your bets at 20-to-1.
Princess Keller's obviously set the tracks alight here in the relative races she's been running in. Concern being the 1,000 in this grade?
You know, I was very surprised to see her running in this race. I was quite nervous about her in the Mallorca, to be completely honest, and I was quite relieved when I didn't see her in the final lineup. I think this race against the Colts over this trip is probably a bit on the tough side for her. You know, if you look at the caliber of the horses she's beaten in the last 2 runs compared to this, it's a lot stronger. So for me, I think she's going to battle to beat these horses, and I think the pricing's a little bit wrong in this race. I could be proved wrong on the day, and she wins, but I prefer others.
Lucinda, horses that have a very good track record in this race are the Joburg Sprinters. They are, without a doubt, a very quick, tough, hardy bunch, and obviously the travel is not ideal. Adam Azzi brings a bunch of horses here, and they've had to be in the half quarantine lockdown in Johannesburg, where they can go out before 10 and then come back and spend time in their stables, etc., etc. But he won the race last year with Behika. We know the Joburg Sprinters, they can be really quick over a 5. And you know, if you take the filly out of the equation here in terms of best weighted, the highest rateds are all Behika, Master Archie, Elysian Chief, etc. Elysian Chief is a horse that I think is capable of running a very, very big race here. What do you make of those Joburg horses? Bartoldi's in good form. Behika's a little bit inconsistent, but on his day, he's close to the fastest horse around. They've got to have a big chance.
Yeah, I think Behika last year kind of blew everyone out the water in this race. I think he won it last year. He obviously loves the track, suited to Cape Town. But a horse like Elysian Chief, for me, should probably be the most fancied out of he is a grade 1 winner already out of the Joburg horses. And Yeah, I mean, I've looked through this race a million times. I was trying to wrap my head around it. I do think the wind's going to play a huge factor. I know that there's a massive southeaster blowing on Saturday, and those inside draws are going to have it a little bit tougher than the horses drawn on the outside. And purely on that, I think Resonate is the one to go with in this race.
Thank you, Lucinda.
It is. Well, we're predicting about 30 to 50 varying throughout the day in terms of wind. So that is going to play a big role. But without a doubt, I mean, the Joburg sprinters have got to be very, very strongly respected. And Elysian Chief, as you said there, Lucinda, second to Big Burn last time, probably had the best prep of all the other Johannesburg horses coming into this race, and has also run a first and a second from 3 starts, second after a rest. So it doesn't stop there. Super open, hit him hard, Sunshine. Jonathan, lightly raced 3-year-old, third run after a break, hasn't quite had, he's had a bit of a stop-start summer, but he was one of the top 2-year-old sprinters, beating At My Command, just behind Trompy, Charles Dickens. Can he have a chance in a race like this?
You know, for me, Justin, I had a good look at him this morning. I was actually chatting to Richard Fourie about him. I was reading him a lot. And Richard thought it was on the sharp side for him, one. And I kind of think he was a good 2-year-old and he's training off a bit. I really didn't like his last run. So for me, he's one that I think is going to battle.
Okay, well, that's the summary of the Cape Flying Championship. It's going to be a fantastic event, and we move into the main race now. Race 9 is the World Sports Betting Cape Town Met Group 1 2,000 meters, a 2 million rand event this year, and wow, a 19-runner field. I can't remember the last time we saw that many horses take their place in this race. And I think, Aldo, that sort of, it shows you a couple of things. I think one of those is that there's potentially not the absolute standout good thing in this year's card, and it's attracted a lot of other people that are just taking their chances and having a runner in the big race. Obviously, Jet Dark, Comedy Ding, those are the 2 horses that have been, I think in the last 4 meetings, there's been a quarter of length between them on 3 occasions.
Yep.
So there's a fairly well-established line there. And I think going back to your horse, Charles Dickens, you know, in their last start in the Lormans King's Plate, again, there was that quarter length difference, yet your horse was a length and a bit clear, and just found a runner like Almutana on the day who came to find him. But Almutana's in this race as well. Jet Dark, Comedy Ding, we've got the 3-year-old Cousin Casey, we've got the 3-year-old filly, Make It Snappy. What do you think, what do you fancy? What do you think are the biggest danger here?
Yeah, I think those are the 2 horses. It's hard to oppose them. I think I ridden Jet Dark once in Durban, and at that stage there was reservations whether he'll see out a 10 furlong, and at the time he felt like 10 furlong something he'll thrive over, you know. So if the pace is half decent, I think he's going to be probably one of the horses corners I'm going to lean towards. Comedy Ding, you can't write him off. Also, I think he wants to do 10 furlong now. The legs are a little bit older now. So the rest of them, I think, is a lot of horses that's taking their chances, as you say, perhaps feeling like those horses are perhaps at the end of their tether. So I think they're taking, like you say, taking a couple of chances here. But yeah, you look past that. Initially, I fancied Cousin Casey quite strong. Unfortunate for the draw. Doesn't make it really easy for him. I think if he had everything his own way, he would have been a massive runner. Make It Snappy 51. I'm not sure if I could see her beating a horse like Comedy Ding or Jet Dark. Marina, I think we're hopeful here. As the shortest price horse I've ridden for Bass so far in the Met. And yeah, after that, it looks pretty open to me. I think Rascallion's a horse that's been catching the eye and finding a bit of form again as of late. After that, I think you've got to find a dark horse, because you always find one in this race every year.
Well, let's go straight into the rerun, and it is of the Lormans King's Plate, and for obvious reasons, a lot of collateral form and horses meeting against each other here. And we see the win under Bernard Fadeherb. Red Sleeves comes to the outside rail here. Jono, what did you make of this? You had Jet Dark in here. I mean, he ran a real good race. Comedy Ding, his old rival. They sort of come together in the next 50 meters or so. And Aldo's making his run up the inside, and then obviously the winner right on the outside race. What did you make of this race? Coming out of it and now going into the WSB Cape Town Met?
Justin, I don't think this is the run, you know, Jet Dark's best run. I think it was a little bit flat, and without making excuses, I think, you know, his prep run was taken away where he fell at the track, and unfortunately he didn't get his prep run in. So this was kind of his run after a little bit of a break. It wasn't ideal, and if you notice, he ran 2 seconds slower than the year before. So he kind of had every chance of winning. He found the gap, and he just didn't quicken like he did the previous year. I think this is his 3rd run after a break. I think he's going to be spot on. He's got the draw in his favour. I think everything's, you'll stay this trip. And he's probably a little bit sharper than Committee Ding is last year. Because, it does worry me, Committee Ding, and I do like him in this race, but he hasn't won for a year. And that has to give you some sort of level of concern. And for me, Jet Dark's also, he's going to be in the top 2 for me, and whatever beats him wins. And there are a lot of horses I like to make a case for. And one of the horses I really like is Cousin Casey. I think he was crying out for this trip physically and on paper. There's no doubt he'll stay this trip. He's got Grant Funnykerk on. All the good horses are drawn well. They'll be up there on the pace. He'll be sitting at the back of the field. And as you know, with Grant, he'll be flying at them. And he could throw a wild card. For me, also the 3-year-old filly, nice weight and draw. But, this is a big step up. And I don't know if the conditions and the way this race is going to be run will particularly suit this filly. So I know there's a lot of confidence for her and the money's poured on. She's actually favourite at the moment as we stand here. And I think that I prefer, as a 3-year-olds go, I would rather be in the Cousin Casey camp. But I could be wrong, but I think the older horses might have the measure this year.
What about the under runners in your yard? Do it again. Unfortunately, it was a little bit disappointing in the Premier's Trophy again this year, but he did the same last year and then actually came back to run very well in the Met itself and have a good season. You got Nexus, who's running at the absolute top of his game at the moment. Warrior, and then of course Pomp and Power as well. Now, so it's a big hand. Where do you see pace in the race, tactics, that type of thing? Because it's not quite obvious at this point.
No, but the pace always creates itself. Where you've got all these horses that are drawn well, they're going to be jockeying for position, especially the first 402 furlongs of the race. They're going to be going and buying for the position, and you will see they'll pace on at the beginning. What happens after that, some sort of is get into position, and whoever's in the lead might try and slow it up, which you hope they don't do because you want a true run race and you want a good result. So do it again. I think Bernard's learned from the last run. He's not going to take him to the front. And he's going to tuck him in, and you can be expecting he's going to be running on strongly. And, if Do It Again produces his very best, he can easily win a race like this with his class. And this is probably almost definitely his last season, and whether he runs in the July for one last time will depend on how he runs here. Nexus, I would have loved Pierre Straden back on. He hasn't been out the top 2 since Pierre's been partnering with him, but some of these jockeys, he jumped ship very quickly when he got offered the King's Plate winner. And Warrior, fantastic run last time out. This is a massive jumping class. He hasn't got the best of draws, so he's going to need a lot of luck in the running. And I'm not quite sure he's up to the sort of level at weight for age turns. And a horse I quite like at the bottom, Rascallion. I think he's a very good horse. He's showing signs of coming back to his best, and he could easily be a lurker.
Lucinda, I think an interesting horse here, obviously, number 14, Cousin Casey, because he's a champion 2-year-old. He looked like a racing phenom that we're all going to be talking about in the following season. So far, he's only had the one defeat in the Guineas behind Charles Dickens, and it's almost like he's had the gloss taken off of him because of how good Charles Dickens has ended up and become the leading sophomore of the crop. But he's surely got to get the Trip A on his running style, and 3-year-olds actually have a very good record in the Lormans King's Plate and the Cape Town Met historically, if you look back. Susanna won it as a filly, which gives Make It Snappy a big shout here. And when they don't often run, but when they do, they either run in very well right about the first 3, even if they don't win. So what do you make of his chances here? He's been a super impressive horse.
I must be honest, out of the 3-year-olds, I think I'm in the Make It Snappy camp. I think she got 51 and a half on her back. She's coming into this race with so much confidence. She's beaten Captain's Ransom. She won the Fillies Guineas as she liked. Cousin Casey's last run was in the Guineas, hey? It's Charles Dickens, yeah. I was a little bit disappointed. I did think he was a bit better than that, I must be honest. I thought he'd be a clear second, but I think him and At My Command were
correct, yes,
right together, and then At My Command didn't really put it together over 18. So what does it kind of say for his chances? Yeah, I'm in the Make It Snappy camp here, I must be honest. I think Comet and Jet Dark are obviously I think it goes further back to this season. I think they're always about half a length between each other if you go back to the Durban season and everything. Yeah, I've gone 3 horses here, 2, 4 and 6.
Before we move on to the next, I think it's important we just cover 2 more runners. We've got the HollywoodBets Durban July winner here, Sparkling Water, who won it in a street. Summer Cup run, not that great, but first run here, the Paddock Stakes, only 2 lengths behind Make It Snappy, running on well. She has travelled here and won the Stayers race on this day last year. She probably needs 2-4 or so to be at her absolute best. But I mean, she's a top filly in her own right, and must have a bit of a chance.
Yeah, and Mike's not going to leave her here for no reason. She's looking fantastic. I saw her the other morning. Yeah, you know, Mike's not a mug. He's not going to be running her here if he didn't think she had a big chance. So you've also got to include her. I just think it's a little bit on the sharp side for her.
Yeah, at this level.
Yes.
And what about 12 Olmutana? Because let's be honest, he won the Lormans King's Plate. A mile might be his best trip. He's run 5 lengths behind Jet Dark over 1800 Group 1 level before. He wasn't in the best of form in that moment. You would imagine that last run has probably taken a little bit out of him. And he probably received, he received a very good ride, not probably. Does he have the potential to come out here with striker and back it up?
I think he gave his all in the King's Plate. He was hard ridden the whole way from the top of the straight. As much as I'd love to see that fairy tale carry on, I do have question marks over the 2000 with him.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go through each one of you one by one. We'll start with Jono for a 1, 2, 3. Nail your colours to the mast, and maybe give us like an outsider for the quartets, because this is going to be a big quartet pool in race 9 with 19 runners.
Jet Dark, Comedy Ding, Cousin Casey, and the Ruffy Rascallion.
Rascallion as the roughie for the quartets. Lucinda?
I've gone 2, 4, 6 here straight.
Perfect. Aldo, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning in the corner of Cousin Casey. Jet Dark, Comedy Ding, I think is always going to be in the mix if Jet Dark's going to be there. Yeah, Olmutana, I think he had a nice prep run going into the King's Plate. I think he caught a bit of a hammering there in the King's Plate. I can't imagine him turning it around so quickly, especially over 10 furlong. I agree with Jono. A little luck in running. Rascallion's probably a dark horse, and one I've been keeping my eye on for some time. So yeah, those will be my picks.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next race, and this is the Group 2 New Turf Carriers Western Cape Stayers. It's a run over 2,800 meters. Race 10 on the card, off at 10 to 6, and a very interesting field here. We'll start with you, Jono. Stayers race. This is one Stayers race where normally the winner comes from like the top rated group of horses, because it is run at conditions and not at a handicap or a compressed handicap. And your stable sends out some very capable Stayers here, none so less than a personal favorite of mine, which is number 9, Silver Host. He obviously had an injury that put him off for quite a while, and a fairly solid comeback run, you'd say, 5 lengths behind Rascallion. He's certain to approve going this trip now with a run under the belt.
Yeah, Justin, he was, the best of luck in running in the last time out from the 11 draw. And I think he's potentially the best stayer in the country on form. And if he reproduces his best, he's going to take up a ton of beating in this field. I think 6 to 1 is pretty generous. And the brass does look like a worthy favourite, but if Silver Host comes back to his best, I think he'll have the measure of a horse like that. So for me, I wouldn't look, I think he's got a massive chance in this field, and I think the value's there. I think it's one of our best value bets in the day, and a nice way to close off the day for us.
Former Durban July winner, Bulgarian, how's he been going? He's also had a bit of an injury, which he's come back from, and not quite recouped that earlier form, but he is getting slightly closer with each run.
I'm worried because you were scratched 2 days ago, so
There we go.
if I was you asking that.
And Salvatore Mundi?
Salvatore Mundi had a really good gallop here at Kenilworth. It was touch and go whether he ran him, as you said earlier, Justin. The conditions of this race don't suit horses like that. You really want to have the best stayers with the highest ratings in a field like this. And although he's held at the weights, his gallop was really good coming into the race, so he could surprise. And as you know, with these staying races, anything's possible. I mean,
Yeah.
you could get the 100 to 1 shot coming home. So you're quite a brave man to have a banker here or go short. But it's a fun race, and it starts in front of the track, as you know, which is fantastic for the crowds. It's one of the highlighted races on the day, and a race we always look forward to.
Lucinda, once again, Johannesburg horse won this race last year. We touched on Sparkling Water. Nebraska is the favourite. I think that was a pretty good run, only a length behind Rascallion over a distance just shy of his best. And he's got phenomenal form as he gets to 2,400 metres and above. What do you fancy in this race? Is he the right horse? Are there a couple of other horses that you think have very good chances of taking him on?
Yeah, I think it's a 2-horse race between him and Silver Host. I think Silver Host has had a bit of a rest, or had something. It was a little bit was off. And I think you've also got to look at a horse. If you're looking for a roughie, this number 2, Senso Unico. Not really a roughie at 7 to 1, but I know Vaughan Marshall thought quite a lot of him before, and it is the sort of race where these horses can come in under the radar.
It is very tricky races, and of course, Aldo, a lot of the outcomes of these staying races depend on how the pace works out, which is always quite hard to predict beforehand. But what do you make of your chances here, number 3, Arctic Drift? I mean, he's a horse he's 6 now, but he's slowly getting to that group level where he's been running a couple of places and seems to be improving a little bit.
Not sure what to make of him, because every single race I've won on him is half this trip. So I think I've won about 5 races on him over 7 furlong, and I wasn't part of this experiment going over a staying trip. But I see he does find himself out of his grind, and suddenly he's in the finish. So I am familiar with his behaviours. Candace seems to be quite confident that we'll get along quite well over the trip. Horse like Chrome Yellow always seems to come well this time of the year. This race he seems to pencil in the back of his head, and he seems to always run a good race. I wasn't sure what I fancied, but Jono's now convinced me to be in their corner. I thought Nebraska might be a tough nut to crack, but Jono sounds pretty confident of a big run from Silverhurst.
It does seem like it, and I think, Nebraska got to be a big runner, just about the favourite, but you can expect a lot of betting fluctuation, I think, with this particular event, because it is quite open, more open than it looks. And Jonathan, just in terms of the day in general, your stable sends out, I think, 35 runners. So you got a whole host of charges on the day. Is there anything we haven't covered in the minor races that you think the betting public should include, bearing in mind that the World Pool events are from race 4 to 12? So there are a couple of races we haven't covered outside of the group races that do feature in the commingled betting pools. And what else do you have from your yard which you think is worth including?
Quickly running through, I think Green Falcon in race 2 has an outstanding chance, and not much value, but I think he'll take some beating over the trip. And your horse Bonica, I think, if you look at her last 2 runs, hopelessly unlucky in both, and I think she's going to run a huge race. Not the strongest of fields, and I think she could very much be worth a bet. And then a tricky race is race 5 for the pick 6. I think you've got a really wide Nevada King to the moon and back. Future Turn, Greg Borch has 3 runners there, and it would be fantastic for him to have a winner on the day for all the efforts he's put into Cape Racing. So another race we're pretty competitive in, and but for the pick 6 you're going to have to go wide, and then the rest I think we've pretty much covered.
Aldo, your other odds going up, Charlie Croker, Michael Faraday flying first outside of the group races. What do you think is your best chance of a winner?
I think they're all proper money chances, and won't be surprised if they're all in the shake-up. I'm expecting them to be, and a couple could probably pop up. It's those sort of runners in such sort of card. The filly flying first, doing really well. Don't know a great deal about her, but her work that she's showing at home suggests that she's putting up winning work. So I won't be surprised to find her in the winning box. Michael Faraday, I hope he'll run as well as he feels, because he's been gelded and he's dappling. I don't think you can have him much better. If it was around the turn, I'd put my head on the block, but it is down the straight that nonetheless he's exceptionally well. Couldn't have him in better condition, and expecting a massive run from him.
Lucinda, in race 11, the inaugural World Pool, the Invitational over 1,200 metres, you've got Bullet running. And what do you make of his chances? I mean, he won his penultimate and a pretty good run out the maidens. He's got to have a squeak.
Yeah, I've brought him back down to the 12 now. I'm going to keep him up the straight. I think he's a sprinter. And he's in fine form. We targeted this race quite a while back, and I'm very happy with him. Sean Veal got off him this morning and said he's spot on. So we're taking our chances, but I think he's in with a good shout.
Fantastic. Well, there it is from our panel, and we look forward to a fantastic World Sports Betting Cape Town Met. It's going to be a phenomenal day, and of course we've got the World Pool brought to you by the Hong Kong Jockey Club to tap into. So get your pick 6 on, estimated 10 million rand. It's a fantastic day of racing, and we'll look forward to seeing you at HollywoodBets Kenilworth.